She looked at me with that calm therapist expression. The kind that says, "You're safe here, even when you don't feel it." "So," she asked softly, "what brings you here today?" It was such a simple question, but it landed like a hammer, because how do you tell a stranger that you've spent most of your life pretending? How do you explain that you've been so afraid of yourself that even saying the truth out loud feels like a betrayal? I stared at the floor. My hands were shaking, and then, before I could stop myself, the words tumbled out. "I think I might be gay." There it was. The secret I'd carried for years. Finally spoken. It hung in the air between us. Raw, fragile, terrifying, and in that moment, everything I thought I knew about myself, about my life, about who I was supposed to be, shifted. That was the first time I ever said those words out loud, and it changed everything. Before that moment, I was good at pretending. Really good. I'd built a life that looked fine from the outside. The kind of life that made everyone say, "You're doing great." But I wasn't. I was tired all the time. Not from lack of sleep, but from the constant effort of hiding. Hiding the way my heart skipped a beat when a woman smiled at me. Hiding the way the word gay made me both curious and terrified. Hiding the way I avoided mirrors because sometimes I didn't recognize who was looking back. Every time someone asked, "Do you have a boyfriend?" I'd laugh and shake my head saying, "Not yet." That lie came so easily I barely felt it anymore. But every lie leaves a scar, even if it's invisible. And over time, the silence started to hurt more than the fear. My coming out journey didn't start with a big declaration or a proud rainbow flag moment. It started with a whisper. With me finally admitting that I was tired of pretending to be fine. So when I booked that first therapy appointment, I told myself it wasn't about that. I said it was for stress, for anxiety, for figuring out life, but deep down, I knew why I was going. I just didn't want to say it yet, not even to myself. The day of my first therapy appointment, I almost didn't go. I sat in my car outside the building, engine running, debating whether to leave. Part of me thought, "You don't need this. You're fine." But another part, the quiet, honest part, whispered, "You're not fine. You're scared." And that voice won. When I walked in, I could feel my pulse everywhere. In my ears, my throat, even my fingertips. The waiting room was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that makes you notice your own heartbeat. When the therapist, let's call her Sarah, called my name, I followed her into the office like I was walking into confession. At first it was surface level stuff. Work stress? Family tension? Sleepless nights? I said all the right things. The way people do when they're trying to sound in control, but she didn't buy it. Therapists never do. After a while she said something that cracked me open. "You talk a lot about feeling disconnected," she said. "Disconnected from what?" And I froze. It was such an innocent question, but it hit me right in the chest, because I knew exactly what I felt disconnected from. Myself. I wanted to say it, to finally say it, but my throat tightened. My mouth went dry. The words sat heavy on my tongue, refusing to move. Then she asked again, gently this time, "Disconnected from what?" And I heard myself whisper, "I don't think I'm who people think I am." It wasn't the full truth, but it was the first crack in the dam. By the third session, I couldn't take it anymore. The lies, the tiptoeing, the "I'm just tired" excuses. So when she asked how I was feeling that day, I didn't answer right away. I took a breath, a long, shaky breath, and said, "I think I might be gay." It was quiet after that, unbearably quiet. I remember staring at her hands folded neatly in her lap, waiting for her to react. Part of me was terrified she'd flinch, or worse, try to fix me. But she didn't. She just nodded, her voice steady and kind. "Thank you for trusting me with that," she said. And then she smiled. Not a forced polite smile. A real one. The kind that says, "You're safe. You're not alone." That's when I started to cry. Not the graceful cinematic kind of crying, the ugly, messy kind. The kind that comes from years of holding everything in. She handed me a tissue and said, "It's okay. You don't have to hold it all anymore." And that's when it hit me. I had spent so many years holding my breath, waiting for permission to exist. And in that small, quiet room, I finally exhaled. But here's the twist. The part that surprised me the most. I thought that once I said the words, "I think I might be gay," I'd feel broken, like I was confessing something shameful. Instead, I felt whole. It wasn't guilt that filled me. It was relief. Relief so deep it made my whole body feel lighter. For the first time, I didn't feel like I was hiding from myself. For the first time, I was home. Before that session, I thought therapy was about fixing yourself. But after that conversation, I realized it's about finding yourself. Before, I lived in constant contradiction, trying to convince myself I was normal, trying to erase the parts of me that didn't fit into other people's expectations. After, I stopped trying to fit. Before, I spent so much energy on staying invisible. After, I started wondering what it might feel like to be seen. That single conversation didn't magically erase my fear. It didn't make coming out easy. But it gave me something I'd never had before. Permission to exist without apology, and that changed everything. I started to notice small shifts in my life. I began saying "I" instead of "we." When people assumed I was dating a man, I stopped editing myself in conversations. I stopped treating my identity like a secret I owed the world an explanation for. That therapy session became the first step in a chain reaction of honesty. The first real step in my coming out journey. Because coming out isn't just about telling other people who you are. It's about finally telling yourself and believing it. I used to think that being queer meant I had to be strong all the time. But what therapy taught me was that strength isn't silence. Strength is vulnerability. Strength is saying, "This is me," even when your voice shakes. If I could go back and talk to the version of me sitting in that therapist's office, the one trembling, terrified, waiting for judgment, I'd tell her this: "You're not broken. You're not lost. You're just learning how to tell the truth. And truth, even when whispered, is powerful." That day didn't mark the end of my story. It was just the beginning. The first time I said I might be gay out loud was the moment I started becoming myself. I wish I could explain the peace that came after. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was quiet. A steady calm that came from finally being honest. That's the thing about lesbian stories and queer stories like mine. They don't all start with parades or big declarations. Sometimes they start in silence, in therapy rooms, in whispered words that finally escape your lips after years of hiding. And that's okay. Because your story doesn't have to be loud to be powerful. If you're listening to this, and you're somewhere in the middle of your own journey, maybe you haven't said it out loud yet. Maybe you're still figuring out the words. Please know this: you don't have to be fearless to be free. You just have to take one honest breath at a time. And if therapy feels like the right place to start, that's not weakness, it's courage. Because sometimes, the most life-changing conversation you'll ever have is the one where you finally stop running from yourself. My therapist once told me, "The truth doesn't destroy you, it liberates you." And she was right. So if my story resonates with you, if you've ever sat in silence wishing you could just say it, your truth, your fear, your hope, I want to invite you to share it below, because your voice matters. Your story matters. And every time we speak honestly, we make the world a little safer for the next person who's afraid to. And if you want to hear more real, human, vulnerable queer stories about courage, identity, and self-discovery, subscribe, join this space. This is where we remind each other that honesty isn't something to fear. It's something to celebrate. So wherever you are in your journey, I hope you find your version of that moment. The one where you stop whispering And finally say out loud, "This is who I am." And when you do, trust me, it will change everything.